I'm restarting my thing. This is the second time it's froze when I was streaming. Thank you. Actually, your uh-oh's what helped me realize it froze. I don't know when it actually froze, though. I know we were just talking about his sleeve prior. Basically, they were saying don't report fires unless there's real fires. That's kind of what it was, the vibe. That's the simple vibe. Let me just put this on here for now. All right. Okay, we'll call it for now. All right. So basically, it's really just telling us about the place. But yeah, no, he's totally giving me the vibes of the monkey from Cloud with a Chance of Meatballs. I can't think of her name. Now that I think about it, I'm surprised there isn't a single reliver in your group.
通りで全員揃って物珍しそうな顔や新鮮な反応をすると思いました。
I was wondering why everyone looked so surprised by what we had at the
特
facility.
にそこのお兄さんはパッと見20歳を超えてますよね。
Just based on looks, I believe you're over 20 already.
ああ、
Yeah.
呪いの症状がだいぶ進行してません？バックアップは早めに取っといた方がいいですよ。
Isn't the curse already eating away at you? You really should get yourself backed up as soon as possible.
いずれ気が向いたらな。
Yeah, when I feel like it.
逆に君は平均よりずいぶん早い年齢でリライバーになったんだね。
In your case, you became a reliver at a pretty young age, didn't you?
ああ、やっぱりここまで堂々と文様を出してればわかりますよね。
Right. I suppose it's only obvious from the design of my body.
というよりも僕だけじゃなく、ここの研究者およそ500人、漏れなく全員がリライバーですけど。
Am I still here? Because I just saw my thing glitch. Is my mouth moving? We have around 500 scientists and researchers working here. Every one of them are relivers. It's good, thank you.
それじゃあ、僕より年下に見えて。
So just because you look a little younger than me?
はい。こんな可愛い見た目ですが、僕結構なおじいちゃんなんですよ。
Yes, I may be cute, but I'm actually an old man inside.
わけあって15の時にリライバーになりまして、以降ずっとこの姿のままです。
That's the weird thing about it. When you get cloned, you stay the same age. I was thinking about that because they were talking about when you become a reliver, it's like a clone of you at that age, you die. That seems weird to me. I became a reliver when I was 15 for personal reasons. Since then, my appearance hasn't changed.
白衣がなければとても研究者には見えませんよね。
I really don't look like a researcher without my lab coat, do I?
せめて外見だけでも年を取れればちょっとくらい貫禄が出てくるかもですけど。
If I could age in appearance, maybe it'd lend me a certain respectability. So a reliver's appearance can never change?
はい。姿はバックアップを取った際の遺伝子の最新情報に固定され、老いることも若返ることもなく、
Correct.
永遠に同じ姿のまま。
A reliver is fixed to the age of their data at the time of backup, so they will not age or mature beyond that.
精神年齢も肉体に引きずられ成長しなくなるので、僕のように若い姿のまま研究者になれる人材はごくわずかというか、他には例がありません。
That means their mental age is often limited accordingly. Unfortunately, not many are able to become young researchers like me. What Dot said was the same as the lesson I learned as a child. A young male reliver who works at the part as the deputy director at the institute. Mother hadn't changed in appearance in all these years, and neither had her personality. If I recalled correctly, Hugo also referred to himself as old. Are we pretty much implying that maybe relivers are more like robots? Like they don't get better feelings, they don't change at all? But I couldn't see any difference between the way he bantered with Adolphe and Yves and the way they did with him. Which was why, although we had heard about what it meant to be old from stories of faraway places, we had never witnessed anything like it in Arpachel. If not for the stories, it would have been impossible to imagine. The elderly lived hidden all around us. Relivers who called themselves old were aged only in their memories, the collection of which would continue to grow indefinitely. That's weird. We continued our conversation passing by a number of staff as we made our way deep into the facility.
到着です。長々と歩かせちゃってすみません。
And we're here. I'm sorry for having you walk so fast.
セキュリティの関係上、研究者用の個室は割と奥の方に配置されているものですから。
For security reasons, the researchers' private quarters are located deep inside a less frequented part of the facility.
こうしてお客様を招いたり、ご飯を用意しに行くときとか、地味に歩くのが面倒なんですよ。
Actually, quite a chore inviting guests and preparing food and drinks. From the sounds of it, Dot also had a room here for himself. He put his hands on the heavy-looking door.
シアンさん、例の方々を呼んできましたよ。
Sian,
お嬢さんもご一緒です。
your guests are here. One of them's a cute-looking girl. He pushed the door wide open. Nice. What a room. A wrinkled lab coat lazily hung on a nearby sofa. On the floor were vials filled with liquid for what I assume were experiments. I noticed stacks of documents and thick books throughout the room. They were scattered across the floor like toys from a toy box. A visibly large fluff of dust floated past my eyes as I looked around, stunned by the mess. I want to clean this place. I want to fix him. My muscles tightened from having to suppress the urge. I knew what I was thinking was out of place considering the situation. The majority of things in this room looked like they shouldn't be touched for anything outside of their specific purposes.
ああ、シアンさんったらまたこんなに散らかして。威厳も肩書きも台無しです。
Scene, I can't believe you got this place this dirty again. Where's your sense of pride?
お客さんを呼ぶつもりなら少しは片付けてくださいってあれだけ言ったじゃないですか。
How many times have I told you to clean up a little bit before a guest arrives? Dihat was directing his complaints towards the center of the room despite no one being around. Suddenly, a large heap of towels and lab coats stirred, falling away piece by piece to reveal wow, my husband. I mean, my goodness. What the heck is going on? You can see his skin. A strange man. He also... Oh! Is that a reliver thing? A reliver thing? Because of his eyes? I noticed that the nun's pupils are also like blue. A strange man. He emerged from the pile of clothes with a grumpy look on his face. His clothes hung from him in a similarly haphazard way. Very hot, strange man. You're right. She didn't specify. It would make sense that this room was his domain, but despite his disheveled appearance, he didn't look like a lazy person at all. That
お前は一体何の権利があって俺の貴重な仮眠の邪魔をする。
What right do you have to disrupt my precious sleep?
俺が約16日間寝ていないことを知っての妨害か。
You recall
嫌がらせだな。
that I have not slept for 16 days. I see this is sabotage. He glared at Dot with exhausted eyes. Love his voice. He has a gorgeous
よ
voice.
し。ならば今すぐ記憶と遺伝子のバックアップを取って心置きなく死んでこい。
All right, go ahead and arrange for your backup now so that I can kill you.
現在133人の予約待ちだが、俺自らお前を優先的にリライバーにしてやろう。
There are 113 people on the wait list, but I'll make sure that you're revived first.
ただし、
But
腕が4本以上生えている人間もどきとしてな。どうだ、研究の効率が上がるんじゃないか。
you're gonna come back as a humanoid with 4 arms. What say you? Perhaps that would make you more efficient in your work?
だったらまず自分で試してください。というか妨害って。
Then you should try it yourself first. And speaking of sabotage,
シアンさんが彼らを呼んでこいって僕に言った
yes,
んじ
I
ゃ
will
ない
love
ですか。
pizza.
覚えてないんです。
May I remind you that you're the one who told me to bring them here, Sheen? Don't you remember?
ああ、そうか。そうだったな。
This is correct.
クルーンをここに呼んでこいと。
I recall telling you early this morning
俺は確かに早朝お前へ告げた。
to bring Koran here.
16日程度の徹夜でここまで記憶が混濁するとは。
I underestimated the effects of sleep deprivation on short-term
そろそ
memory.
ろこの肉体と脳も替え時だな。
I should replace my body and brain soon. The man cracked his knuckles and stretched as he slowly rose to his feet.
ここに外部からの客が訪れるのは数年ぶりだな。
It's been a few years since I've had guests from outside this facility.
だがもてなしは期待するなよ。俺は研究以外に興味がない男だからな。
Don't expect to be entertained. I have no interest apart from my research. He massaged his neck, which was covered in a flower design, looking at us with his beautiful multicolored eyes. He still hadn't introduced himself, but everyone in the country is old enough to speak knew who he was. Do you know what he looks
みっ
like,
ともない
though?
ところを見せちゃってすみません。でも、この見るからにだらしない人が。
I'm so sorry you had to see something so shameful, despite his slovenly appearance.
皆さんをお呼びしたこの研究所の所長シアン・ブロフィワーズ。
So he does have the blue, like, in the middle of his eyes. He is the director of the Institute, Sheen Brofis, who requested your presence.
最古のリライバーにしてその技術を生み出した。
He is the creator of Reliver technology and the oldest Reliver in existence.
この国の救世主たる天才科学者です。
A genius scientist and our savior.
は
Just a sigh. Dot brought in some foldable chairs from another room for us to use. Like, this man. We were unable to open our mouths or move in front of the man who was sitting idly on the sofa in front of us. He's so
皆
hot.
さん
He is.
面白いぐらいに緊張してますね。
I can tell you guys are all pretty nervous.
するに決まってんだろ。
Did you expect anything different?
だよね。
Well said. I can't stop my hands from shaking. Mathis, Adolphe, Eves, and I whispered to each other. None of us dared to say a thing, given the possibilities in our minds that we might be executed for any rudeness. Sion, I forgot to pronounce his name already, director of the National Research Institute. 60 years ago, he developed and established Reliver technology to save the people living here. He was not only the father of reliver technology, but also a talented scientist and the savior of this country. Oh. His father and grandfather had also worked to find a way to extend the people's lifespan. I'm seeing tears. I don't know what I'm looking at. They researched a system that would allow the creation of clones and the transfer of memories and personalities. Their work was considered far-fetched by other scientists and readily dismissed. After his father's death, Sheen took over them and managed to achieve concrete
ソラ
results.
どうだ
There you go.
この通り23の寿命を乗り越えてみせたが
See, I was able to live past my 23rd year. In a matter of months, he transformed his father's theories into reality. He experimented on his own body and became the first and oldest reliver to prove that he could overcome the cures. I started to say the cure. That totally changed the word. With his brain and the reliver technology he created, he became the people's only lifeline to escape death. His accomplishments earned him the trust of the royal family and the rest of Arpachel. In fact, the facility was pretty much created just for him and his continued research. The Arpachel royal family were known to look down on the common people and live without any regard for their well-being. He was the only one they would never cross, bending over backwards to satisfy his will. I wasn't surprised. After all, even if they were the royal family, he could simply withhold his ability to revive them as relivers. Or could he, if they had the technology? That would mean that no one would be able to escape the curse of death. In other words, he was the true ruler and sole power governing this country. A talented scientist and the oldest reliver who developed reliver technology 60 years ago, he is the director of the institute and the de facto ruler of the country. If he is 60 years ago, and he probably was about 23 almost, so he's at least 80. This was the same man we read about in our history books growing up. It was only natural that we would be tense in front of such a legendary figure. Yves and Adolphe were cautiously looking at the person in front of us. Mathis was visibly shaken, afraid to somehow get on his wrong side. Monsieur Brofils observed our reactions one by one, then slowly crossed his legs.
さてお前たちがそれぞれクルーンと自警団の代表者だったな
I still don't understand this pose even slightly. Now then, you are the representatives of Koran and the Corpse, correct?
はい。
Yes.
ああ。
Yeah.
でそっちの白いのは
And the Pell went over there.
マティス・クロードです。
My name is Mathis Claude.
前に研究所に多額の出資をしてらしたクロード家の末っ子さんらしいです。
He's the heir of the Claude family that has funded a great deal of our research.
例の事件に関わってると聞いたので、一緒に連れてきちゃいました。
I brought him along since I heard he was involved in the incident.
クロードあああの本の虫の血筋か
Claude, you mean the bloodline of bookworms?
しかしマティスあの家にそんなのいたか
Still Mathis, was it? I wasn't aware you existed.
いたからいるんじゃないですか。
Well, you can see him now in the flesh.
お恥ずかしい話なんですが、今まで僕ほとんど屋敷から出ることがなかった。
Barely stuttering, though. He's made such profound steps. I'm ashamed to admit it, but until recently, I rarely ever left the estate.
社交界の場にも 出席したことがなく、僕の存在を知らなくても
I didn't attend many
仕方ない
events or
か
parties.
と。
I'm not surprised that some are unaware of my existence.
いやいや、恥ずかしくなんかないですよ。むしろいたかなんて。こっちの方が失礼しました。
Come now, there's nothing to be ashamed of. If anything, one of us should be ashamed for saying such a rude thing.
シアンさん、いい加減重要な支援者の詳細くらい覚えてくださいよ。
Xian, please remember our most important clients and supporters.
来客も王族とのやりとりも基本的にはいつも副所長の僕が対応してるじゃないですか。
I may be the deputy director, but I really don't want to be your shield for handling all correspondence with outsiders.
断る。連中の名前を記憶したところで、俺の研究にはかけらも役立たん。
Denied. Remembering people's names will not help me with my research. Deputy director, so Duat is a high-ranking officer. His youthful looks were still deceiving me, despite me knowing that he was much older.
それで、こっちの娘は
And there's this girl. Our eyes suddenly met. Once there, both feet stared for a second, then looked away uninterestedly.
それじゃあ僕はお客さん用のお茶とお菓子を用意してきますね。
Now then, let me go get some tea and snacks for our
あ
guests.
とはお若い皆さんとお若くないシアンさんでどうぞごゆっくり。
I'll leave the rest to the young ones and our not so young one. Duat, our only source of brightness, left the room. Upon the sound of the door closing, Monsieur Brofis began to speak.
クルーンと自警団の長たち、
Leaders of the Quran and the Corps.
今回使いを出してまでお前たちを呼び出したのは、とある依頼を申し込むため。
The reason I summoned you here was to place a work order for a task requiring special attention.
俺は回りくどいのが嫌いだ。率直に告げさせてもらおう。
I don't like beating around the bush, so let me put it frankly. Once there, Brofist grabbed a wrinkled newspaper and tossed it at our feet. At first glance, it was clear that this was the newspaper from a few days ago. The headline stated that I was the likely culprit of a mass murder in the alley. The reason he was showing us
船
was
の墓地に埋葬されたという大量死事件の死体。
the bodies from this incident are currently buried in a graveyard in Cohen.
それをお前たちの手で掘り起こし、俺へと提供しろ。
I want you to dig up the bodies and bring them here. An unsettling chill replaced the tension we felt a few moments ago. How does he know about the bodies that were buried by the hospital? No worse than that. He wants us to dig up their graves and bring him the bodies, but why? He looked on with deathly calm, continuing in a flat
下手
tone.
に混同されても困るな。念のために詳細を付け加えておこ
I suppose I should explain further since I don't want assumptions to be made.
う。俺はブロートやらはどうでもいい。
I have no interest whatsoever in this Boreau character.
必要なのはあくまで自らの胸をかきむしって死んだ変死体の方だ。
All I want are the bodies of those who were suspected to have clawed away at their own chest.
病院での検視結果まで把握してるのか。
So he knows about the autopsy results.
俺には俺なりの情報網があってな。
I have my connections. It's my mother, isn't it? Hearing a response to his mumbling, Adolph's expression filled with alarm. He has good ears, or perhaps he already knew beforehand what Adolph was going to say. Once their both response was instant.
依頼の内容はわかりました。
We understand your work order.
ですが、その理由は何のためにあなたはあの遺体を必要としているんです
May I ask why? Is there a particular reason you require those bodies?
暇つぶしだ。
To kill time. Time froze around us.
暇つぶし
To kill time?
知っての通り、俺の専門は
I doubt I need to explain, but
死の呪いに耐えうる優れたクローン体を効率よく作成するリライバー技術の研究だ。
my research involves the use of reliver technology to create clones for after death.
だが気分転換に違うテーマを追い求めることもある。
But sometimes I work on other ideas for a change of pace. It seemed to be just as he said.
まあ要するに、俺なりに変死の原因を死体をばらして調べてみたい。
In short, I want to perform my own autopsies and determine the cause of death myself. Perform his own autopsies? So he wants us to act as grave robbers just to get bodies for him to dissect? That was how it sounded to me. We were all unable to say anything in response to his work order, which showed a blatant lack of respect to the deceased. That said, considering his position in society, we could hardly voice our disapproval.
それは自警団の俺も含めての依頼、いや命令か？
Just to confirm, is this an official order to the corpse?
いいや、あくまでクルーンへの依頼だ。お前には契約を交わす際の立会人になってもらおうと思ってな。
No, it is a work order for Quran. I simply needed you here to bear witness to the signing of our contract.
いざ依頼を実行する際、こいつを墓荒らしと誤解して拘束されては笑い話にもならん。
I would not want your group to inadvertently assume he's robbing graves when he's fulfilling a work order from me. Despite Monsieur Beaufils' calm demeanor, I could tell he was holding back a chuckle, perhaps imagining the misunderstanding.
俺が依頼を引き受けることを前提にしているんですね。
You say this as though we've agreed to this work order.
引き受けなかった場合に困るのはお前たちの方だからな。
If you don't, you'll be the ones with the problem. Huh?
それはどういう意味ですか？
What do you mean by that? Adolphin Fears frowned immediately, seeming to know what was being implied. Monsieur Beaufils continued.
そこの小さいの二人、依頼内容の是非は一度置いて状況を整理してみろ。
You two over there, I want you to put your common sense aside for a moment and think about it.
お前たちが今解決に向けて優先している事件はどっちだ？
Of the issues you're trying to resolve, which is of higher priority?
それはもちろんブローの方。あ、
Well, of course, going after Barreau and. That's right. We've been putting aside the other unknown deaths. We only know the autopsy results of the suicides because Lucas asked Dr. Capricine to check them. And that was because they were admitted to the hospital with injuries from Barreau.
そして俺たちにはこれ以上変死について調べる術がない。
We don't have any way of investigating the other deaths at
遺
present.
体を持っていったこの衛兵たちが原因を突き止められなければ迷宮入りして終わりだね。
We're at a standstill if the Royal Guard can't or won't investigate the bodies that they took.
正直自警団からすれば渡りに船の提案、いや協力の申し入れだ。
To be honest, your work order. No, your support is what the corpse needs.
だろ？俺は話が早くて優秀な人材は嫌いじゃない。
Indeed, I like people who are quick to understand things. I just can't get over his pose. I don't get it. Got like technology on his outfit. I see.
だからといって快くうなずくのは難しいですね。
I can't say I'm wholeheartedly in favor of accepting this work order,
心よくでなければうなずけるということか？
which means you'll accept it even if you're not wholeheartedly in favor of it. He wanted to refuse as founder of the Quran, but he couldn't as a member of the corpse. Seeing Yves contemplating his predicament, Monsieur Beaufils lets out a wide grin. What ended up breaking the long silence was snacks?
シアン様、僕から少しだけ
Excuse me, Lord, if I may.
依頼を受ける上での詳細な内容をお聞きしても
Would it be
いいでしょう
possible
か
for us to hear more details in relation to the proposed work order? Mathis's hands trembled as he spoke.
ほ
Oh? Monsieur, eyes narrowed at the unexpected interjection. Mathis glanced at us quickly as if asking us to let him handle the
う。構
situation.
わんが様付けはやめろ。シアンでいい。
I don't mind explaining, but go away with the Lord. Just call me Sheen.
あのふぬけ王族どもからご機嫌取りにそう呼ばれているんでな。正直うんざりしている。
I'm sick of hearing that title from those royal fools trying to get on my good side.
はい。では、シアン
Right.
さんに
Then if I may, Shian,
遺体を引き渡した場合の解剖に伴う損傷率、それから遺族への返却の有無は
how much of the bodies will be dissected for your investigation? Also, will the bodies be returned to their families?
100% と
100% and no. He replied without hesitation.
ということは、胸以外の場所も徹底的に解剖するんですね。それこそ元が人だったと思えないぐらいに。
Which means you'll be dissecting them entirely, not only their chest, or rather reducing the bodies to lumps of flesh.
失血死の原因自体は自殺だとほぼ確定しているのに、それはなぜですか？
Why perform further autopsies when the cause of death was already determined?
俺は奴らがそんな強行に走った理由と過程に興味がある。
I'm interested in what motivated the suicides and how they were made possible.
脳の異常から来る突発性の行動か、はたまたそれを引き起こす感染型の病か、気を狂わせる薬でも一斉に煽ったか。
Perhaps from some irregularity in the brains, perhaps triggered by the disease, drugs may have led to this insanity.
いずれにせよ前例のないレアケースだ。元の姿のまま返してやれる保証はほぼない。
In any case, what happened was very rare. I cannot promise to return the bodies in their original form. Mathis has grabbed his chest with his frail hands.
どうしてたった数体の遺体にそこまで
Why would you do that to the bodies? It was clear that what the bodies had in store for them could be described as nothing less than carnage. Still, it doesn't seem to bother Sheen. Instead,
別に構わんだろう。体なんぞ所詮は脳と心臓を保管するための入れ物だ。
doesn't matter. A body is merely a vessel that houses a brain and a heart.
その中身が失われればただの残骸。要はリライバー化に伴い廃棄される。期限切れのクローン体と同じ。
Without those organs functioning, bodies are simply carcasses, no different from the expired clone bodies of relivers.
それに変死の原因が病
What if
や
they need
薬の
hearts
類
for
だった場合、
relivers?
国家として
Furthermore,
も放
if
置でき
drugs
る
or disease
そ
were
の死体たちの
involved,
解剖結果が
it becomes a national matter. Performing thorough autopsies is critical.
また起きるかもしれない同様の現象。変死を防ぐための礎になるかもしれない。
The knowledge
Chigoga.
may lay the foundation in preventing a similar phenomenon from occurring again. Don't you agree? Sheehan had offered other reasons apart from satisfying his own curiosity. As we were being led back to the topic at hand, Mathis must have realized there was no use in further arguing against it. What Sheen was saying did make sense, but this is a flashback. We're skipping it.
イさんは
Didn't deserve to die like that. Protected me.
世界それを愛
I love my brother. Got it. I had also experienced similar tragedies in the short time I had been alive. Memories of death that could never be undone flooded back to my mind. That throbbing pain seemed to be pushing me towards action. Ugh. I mean, if you do nothing, then it's not really pushing you towards action. That that's wrong. I decided to disagree with what he said.
何？
What? The room froze over in silence. Leah,
お前、
what are
いきな
you?
り何を？
Sheen raised his hand to stop them from speaking.
娘、今お前は否定を向けたのか？
Girl, you dare refute what I've said.
60年以上、常に最善の正解を出し続けてきた。
For 60 years, I've arrived at the most accurate conclusions.
この俺に向かって。
And you're telling me I'm wrong? It was the pressure that caused me to speak, but I couldn't take it back what I said now. I needed to continue, even if I had forced myself into a corner. I mustered the strength to voice my thoughts. What you're asking is for us to unearth the graves of victims who died a horrible death, taking them away from their families and making them suffer even more. Which is why I disagree with you. Isn't there some other method that can be employed? At that, the air around him changed a
こ
little.
の国で死者の尊厳を説くのか？珍しい娘だな。
You're a strange one preaching to me about the sanctity of death.
いや、お前だけじゃないな。本来はリライバーしかいないはずのこの施設で。
No, not just you. There are only relivers living at the and working at the institute, but
命のあり方について詰め寄る本物の人間が俺の目の前に揃って並んでい
in
る。
front of me now is a group of humans telling me what life is supposed to be.
まるで俺の方が異端の存在のようじゃないか。なかなか新鮮な状況だ。
You're making it sound as though I'm the heretic in the room. It's refreshing, to be
リラ
honest.
イバー技術を開発したばかりの頃を思い出す。
This reminds me of when I first began my research into
Daga.
reliver technology. But
死者の尊厳。それをよりにもよってお前が語り思うのか？
of all people, you're the one trying to honor those who have died?
今まで山のような死体を周囲に作り上げてきた死神の娘。
Someone who has built up a mountain of corpses around her, death herself.
お前
Yeah.
彼女のことを知っていた上で、今まで触れずにいたんですか？
First off, all y'all tell me I'm not death, and then you instantly go on this train. I'm standing in this room too. You've known all along who she is, but you didn't bring it up until now.
こいつの正体など目的には一切関係なかったからな。
Her identity has nothing to do with my objective.
この国はこいつの容姿や名前の情報はほぼ渡っていなかったはずだぞ。
The details of her name and appearance shouldn't have made it to this district.
それはこの娘自身が誰よりも知っているだろう。
She knows the reason better than anyone else. Sheen pulled a single letter out from between a stack of books. That letter. The letters I've been delivering for Mother all this time were for you?
ああ、あの女とはあいつが生身の頃に知り合って以来、ちょっとした腐れ縁でな。
I've known her since she was still human. I suppose you could call us friends.
定期的にクーネとセルネボルの情勢を報告し合っていた。
We've exchanged information regarding occurrences in Cohen and Cernavel.
さすがにお前の存在自体は書いてい
Of
な
course,
かっ
she
た。
hasn't written a word about your existence, but
あの女が死神と呼ばれる金髪の娘を引き取った。
do you recall hearing a rumor that she took in a
噂自体
blonde
は聞
girl
いていたんだな。
who was thought to be by many as death?
手紙を届けに来るお前を窓から一度見かけた時点で、そうだと気づいていたよ。
It only took one look from my window when you came to deliver a letter to know that you were that girl.
さもこの世で自分が一番不幸ですとでも言いたそうな。被害者ぶった陰鬱な印象が遠目からでもよーく残って。
After all, I could see that miserable look on your face from afar, as though you were the most unfortunate person in the world. As unflattering as it was, I was impressed by how he was able to describe me so accurately. I always wondered who Mother knew at the Institute, but I never expected that person to be the very person in front of me. So the reason I was allowed in here was...
単なる興味だ。あの女が引き取ったからには死神の異名にも意味があると思ったんだが。
sheer curiosity. Hearing that she had taken in someone known as Death naturally caught my attention, but
いざ顔を見れば期待外れだ。何の変哲もない暗くておとなしいだけの
looking up
小娘
close,
じゃないか。
I'm disappointed. You're just an ordinary, quiet-looking, sad girl. Sheen then changed the subject as if he had lost interest.
俺も忙しい身でな。これ以上無駄に時間を消費したくない。考慮の猶予も十分与えた。
I'm a busy man, so I don't want to waste any more of my precious time. I've given you more than enough time to
こ
consider
の
it.
依頼を引き受けるか引き受けないか。
Will you accept my work order or not?
そろそろ返事を聞かせてもらおうか。
What's your reply,
く
Corin?
る。
His question echoed through the room. Eves looked straight into his eyes of the man who ruled over all our lives. He took a breath.
そうですね。今までのやりとりから、俺なりに考えをまとめてみましたが、
Let me see. I've gathered my thoughts about the matter based on our conversation so far.
俺は、シアンさんの主張は正論だと思います。今後の治安のことを考えるなら、
I
俺
believe
は
what
あなたの依頼を引き受けるべきだ。
I believe what you're saying is correct, considering the public safety is at risk. I should accept your work order. Eves? It sounded like he was saying he agrees with digging up the graves. Didn't it said he should. I looked at Sheen for some reason, and he didn't look happy to hear Eve's response. Adolph, who would usually be the first to voice his thoughts about Eve's decision, was also looking on in silence.
正論だからこそ。
Yes, you are correct. So, his mouth widened into a grin. Feeling like himself again, he smiled at Sheen like a friend would.
堂々と、しかるべき手続きと説明をした上で、俺たちではなく遺族と交渉し、遺体を墓から引き取ればいい話では？
All that needs to be done is to explain this to the families and take official measures to retrieve the bodies from their graves.
あなたの立場なら難しいことじゃないし、打診さえすれば、国の近衛兵だって動いてくれるはず。
You have the power to do that quite easily. I'm sure the Royal Guard will carry out your order without question.
なぜあえて俺たちを雇い、墓を荒らしてまで回収することにこだわるんです？
So I have to ask you why you insist on hiring us to rob the graves ourselves. He was right. The process he laid out should have been obvious from the start, but we didn't think of it due to the pressure of Sheen's presence. Hearing Eve's response, Sheen put his hand to his forehead and let out a sigh.
挑発にも乗らない。独善に駆られない。大を優先する英雄願望もない。
You do not respond to provocations. You are not driven by self-righteousness. You do not seek glory as a hero to the masses.
評判通りの綺麗事が好きなだけのお人よしなら、御しやすいと思ったんだが。
I thought I could control you easily if you were as gullible and soft-hearted as everyone says.
どうも想像していた善人像とはだいぶ違うな。少々厄介だが、有能そうだ。
You're definitely not the good person I was expecting you to be. If anything, you are clever and thus a nuance to me.
やはり人づての情
A
報な
nuisance,
ど当てには
not
な
a
らない。
nuance. I knew I couldn't trust what others said about... Suddenly,
たった今戻りました。遅くなってごめんなさい。お茶とお菓子を用意しましたよ。
I'm back! Sorry for taking so long. I brought you some tea and
研
snacks.
究員の皆さんがあれもこれもと分けてくれました。持つべきは可愛がってくれる同僚ですよね。
Our staff shares all sorts of tasty goodies with us. I knew it was worth keeping an eye out on my adorable colleagues.
あ、それとクッキーも焼いてみたんですよ。紅茶味なんだけど、口に合えばいいな。
I also baked some cookies. I hope they go well with the tea. Dwatch wheeled a cart full of tea and snacks into the room.
ダーハト、
The hot Sheen sounded irritable, perhaps sensing that the tension here had completely vanished. Maybe Dahat was ignoring it, or perhaps he didn't notice. Dahat was humming happily as he poured tea for everyone.
あなたは女の子ですから、やっぱり甘いものがお好きで
Let
すよ
me
ね。
see. Are you the type of the girl that likes sweets, Lee?
というわけで、こちらのクッキーをお隣のマティスさんと一緒にどうぞ。
Please enjoy these cookies with your friendly neighbor Mathis.
どうも。
Thank you. Sweets! I know. Thank you very much.
で、アドルフさんとヒューゴさんは、
Now then, Adolph and Hugo.
男性のお菓子の好みって判断が難しいので、かなり悩んだんですけど、
It's hard to guess what kind of sweets boys like, so I had to think really hard.
ここは甘さ控えめのチョコレートが無難じゃないかなって。苦手だったらすみません。
I came to the decision that something popular chocolate would be perfect. Sorry if I got it wrong.
特に問題ない。
Those will do.
俺もアドルフも美味しくいただけるよ。気を使ってくれてありが。
Adolph and I both like chocolate, so that works great. Thank you for being so. They both look confused as they receive their tea and chocolates. Sensing that something wasn't quite right, Mathis and I thought about it too. Ah, the answer was obvious. Mathis is a boy. I think you're mistaken. His name isn't Hugo, it's Yves.
え
Huh? Huh? Suddenly, Sheen's bold posture slumped a bit.
イブ、
Yves.
お前は今イブと呼ばれたか。ヒュ
Did
ー
you
ゴでは
just
なく
say Yves just now? You're not Hugo?
はい、そうですけど。
That's
ヒューゴって
correct.
え
Were you expecting Hugo?
そういやお前、ダーハトが迎えに来てからクルーンとしか呼ばれてなかったな。
Come to think of it, ever since Dahat came for you, he's only ever called you Quran. I thought there was going to be that they thought Mathis was a girl.
いきなり本題に入ったので、自己紹介もしませんでしたね。
And we drove right into the subject, so we didn't really have a chance to introduce ourselves. Wait, so they had your name mistaken from the very beginning?
え
Huh? It seems like this was the case from Sean's scarily calm expression directed towards Dahat.
ダハト、
Dahat?
俺が調査を命じたとき、クルーンの長の名前はヒューゴだと、お前が報告したのを覚えているが。
You reported to me that the leader of Quran was Hugo. You do remember this, don't you?
あ
あ
はい
Uh-huh?
言いましたね。
Maybe?
違うんです。シュディ出身のお金持ちの人がいるって聞いたから、てっきりそちらが店主さんかと。
Was I wrong? I heard they had a rich person from Chatus there, so I thought he was the owner.
なるほど。こっちでは一度も仕事したことないし、それなら勘違いしても仕方ないかな。
These like weird poses. I see now. I'm not surprised you were mistaken since you haven't worked in that district before.
ヒューゴは確かにクルーンの相棒だけど、一応店主は俺だよ。
Hugo is my work partner at Quran, but, well, I'm the owner.
ほら、自動車に乗る前、別行動のために別れた彼がヒューゴで。
Do you remember just before we got in the car? The person who left was Hugo. The hot gave a start when Sheen pinched his brows and let out a deep sigh.
向こう40年。減給な。
A 40-year pay cut for you.
なんですその理不尽な理事査定。ちょっと間違えちゃっただけじゃないですか。
Your evaluations of me is so unfair. I only made one tiny mistake, you know.
そのちょっとがどれだけ重要な意味を持つか、お前にはわからんだろうな。
The tiny mistake is more significant than you could comprehend, but you wouldn't
せ
understand.
めて全員の名前まで告げていれば、俺も聞き逃さなかったというのに。
If everyone had introduced themselves, I could have found out much sooner. Shin clicked his tongue in frustration, saying that things were different now. I feel like the atmosphere in here changed as soon as they heard your name.
うん。俺の名前が何か間違えられたことについては特に気にしていませんけど。
So may I ask why? I mean, I'm not upset over my name being mistaken or anything. He's asked Shin in an uneasy tone, but he didn't get a clear reply.
イブ。そしてその仮面。
Eve's that mask.
そうか。お前が
I see. So Shin's eyes narrowed. He stared at Eve's face for a moment as if recollecting the
前
past.
言撤回だ。墓は荒らさなくていい。
I take back what I said. I don't want the bodies anymore.
強制もせん。この場は俺が折れてやろう。
I won't force anything. You can just leave. And with that, the negotiation ended.
急にどうしたんですか？
Huh? What just happened? Eve was surprised at the sudden turn of
まあ
events.
なんだ。借りは返す主義で。それと、
How can I say this? I always pay what's due, and Sheen loosened up a bit, using his thumb to gesture to some food left on a
俺
desk.
の主食はパンだからな。
I usually just eat bread.
ますますよくわからないんですけど。
You're losing me.
イブ、どうしてお前の名前が出た途端、こいつの態度が変わったんだ。
Use, why do you think his attitude changed the moment your name came up?
もしかしてクルーンさん独自の情報網でこの方の弱みを何かしら握っているんですか？
Could it be that you've obtained information through Koron's network to use against him?
わからないし握ってないかな。正直、俺が一番混乱してる。
I'm not sure. I don't have anything to use against him. I'm honestly puzzled myself. But from the look of things, I doubt Sheen would explain why.
気になるけど、撤回を撤回されても困るから、あまり追求はしないでおこうか。
I'm curious, but it's best we leave the topic alone so that he doesn't change his mind
残
again.
る問題は、検視の件だけど。
What we need to focus on is the autopsy, as we whispered amongst ourselves.
僕の給料。今月欲しい本がいっぱいあったのに。
My pay. I had so many books I wanted to buy this month, too. Dahat managed to reduce his 40-year pay cut to 2 months and was now pouring more tea for us with tears in his eyes. I reached out to help him as I couldn't help but feel sorry about his situation. After seeing the tea distributed to everyone in the room, Sheen spoke in a tone far different from when he first walked in.
正直死体の件でここまで揉めるつもりはなかった。
I didn't intend to pester you folks that much over the
だが
bodies.
揃って俺に臆さず切り込んできた度胸を見込み、あの質問への回答をくれてやろう。
That said, I'll answer that question of yours as a reward for having the guts to argue against me.
そもそもの発端はあのふぬけ脳なし近衛兵どもだ。
Firstly, you wouldn't be here if it weren't for the idiotic, spineless royal guard.
あいつらさえ油断しなければ、お前らに依頼するでもなく、俺はとっくに変死体の解剖に着手していた。
If only they hadn't been so careless, I would have already begun the autopsies long before I summoned you here. He was grumbling up a storm, and by the sound of things... Excuse me? Was the royal guard supposed to deliver the bodies here? Rather than the hospital, they should have been addressed to you, Sheen?
ああ、昨晩到着する予定だった。
They were supposed to arrive last night. You said you weren't able to start on the autopsies.
それどころか、わざわざクーネのお墓を暴こうとした。
Coupled with the fact he wanted us to dig up graves in Koen?
まさか。
It can't be.
この衛兵から届かなかったんですか？
The bodies that were supposed to be delivered by the royal guard are missing.
ああ、ただの一つもな。
Not a single one made it.
それどころか奴ら死体を解剖の余地もないほどに破損してくれてな。
Making matters worse is those idiots apparently treated the bodies so badly that there was nothing left for me to dissect.
さすがに俺もここまで奴らが無能だとは思わなかった。
I knew they were useless, but apparently they were more useless than I thought.
それはお墓を暴いてまで遺体を欲しがるはずですよね。
Which is why you wanted us to go
それ以外
dig up graves
残ってないんですから。
to get more bodies since those are the only ones left. I can see how it's impossible to ask the families of the bodies because the royal guard lost the others. At this point, it's not even negotiable.
で、例のごとく、その失態にも箝口令が出たのか。
Is their blunder being covered by another gag order?
ご名答。情報が入るとほぼ同時にな。
Precisely as soon as the news reached us. Which means he won't be able to research anything apart from the Reliver technology.
世間からは俺が国の最高権力者どうのと言われているが、
Everyone says I'm in the highest position of power in this country,
あ
but
くまで俺は王族への影響が大きいだけで、実際に奴らを従属させてるわけじゃない。表向きはそれに従う必要がある。
all I have are connections to the royal family that won't work when I need them to. They only need to appear accommodating.
事情を説明せずに俺たちをうなずかせることができるなら、それに越したことはなかった。ってことですね。
So it would have been best if we had simply agreed to your work order without digging into what was really happening.
まあ、最終的にはこうして話す羽目になったが。
In the end, I had to explain everything to you anyways. Even if we did dig up the graves, I'm sure it would have caused another commotion. And perhaps the royal family would have buried the news too.
でもシアンさん、今回ばっかりは相手が悪かったですよ。
But Sheen, the royal guard's not totally to blame this time
厳
around.
密にはこの衛兵たち死体を紛失したんじゃなくて、
Technically, the royal guard didn't lose the
一
bodies.
緒にプチッと肉塊にされちゃったんじゃないですか。
All that happened was they got squished into the rest of the meat pile by the boary guy. Everyone's dismay turned to astonishment.
どうしてそこで奴の名前が出てくるんですか？
Why is his name only being mentioned now?
面白くもなんともない理由だぞ。
Not that like it would have changed anything. Mathesis pressed for an answer, so Sheen began to speak in more detail about what happened last night. If it's a flashback, I'm skipping it. Late last night, the plan was to have the royal guard retrieve the bodies from the mortuary and bring them to the institute, but during their delivery, the soldiers were ruthlessly killed by an attacker that mutilated them. Each heart was gouged out of its chest and a dagger was left in place. Their bodies were discovered in the state no different from the Borough's others' murders. As for the bodies to be delivered, they were all cut up by Borough into unidentified lumps. Except for the missing hearts, all organs, limbs, and faces were mutilated. The scene was so sickening that the person who first happened upon the scene went mad and was taken to the hospital. Which was why Sheen was trying to find a way to recover the other mutilated bodies that were buried by Dr. Capuchin.
もし被害者の中にバックアップを取っている者がいれば、身元確認自体は時間をかければ可能だ。
If any of the victims' registered backups determined their identities will be possible in time.
現場に残された血液を研究所に保管された遺伝子データと照合できるからな。
I can analyze their blood and match the sample to the DNA we have stored on
だがリ
file.
ライバー化は期待するなよ。
But they won't be reviving as relivers. Huh?
制約では死亡申請を行う保証人が死体が本人であることを確認し、
according to the Reliver Pledge, one's body must be identified as dead upon
か
arrival.
つ研究所で直接破棄した上でクローン体を作成することが義務付けられている。
In addition, all bodies must be discarded at the Institute before a clone is permitted to be deployed.
顔も潰され肉塊にされている以上、その保証人も死体を判別できない。リライバーとして復活する権利はほぼないも同然だ。
If we are delivered a mass of mingled flesh and blood, the blood of the living may very well be mixed in among them. That's horrible.
前から思っていたんですけど、結構厳しいですよね。誓約書のルール。
I've been thinking for a while now that the terms of the contract are too restrictive.
そうか。王家が定めたにしてはまともな内容だぞ。
Really, considering the royal family wrote it, I'd say it's quite
死
reasonable.
んでもいないのにクローン体を増やし、自分同士で犯罪組織を組んだ小賢しい奴が過去にいたんでな。
Some have tried to create an
その
army of their
模倣
own
犯対策だ。
clones to commit crime, so the contract is put into place as a safety measure. Oh,
で
interesting.
もどうして奴は変死体にまで危害を加えたんでしょ
Why would Barreau mutilate the dead bodies? True, I thought those bodies were separate from his other murders.
それはあくまで予
It's
想に
just
過
an
ぎないからね。
assumption.
この衛兵を狙うついでに死体を潰したか。あるいは最初から両方が狙いだったのか。
Could have mutilated them out of spite, or it could be for his plan from the
それは
start.
調査しねえとな。殺されたこの衛兵たちの死体も検視するのか。
Guess we've got more to look into now. Are you able to examine the body of the soldiers?
傷口を見て襲われた状況を確認する程度なら可能だな。
If it's something simple like verifying how they were killed, then
た
yes.
だあの部隊は根性においてはまだバックアップを取っていなかった。復活は絶望的と言
The
っている。
soldiers in the unit didn't have backup, so reviving them would have been impossible in any case. Sheen said so in a tone that seemed to imply that he wouldn't have revived them anyways.
結果が欲しければ送ってやる。どうせならこれを機に正式な協力関係を結ぶか？
I can send you my finding later. So are you interested in entering into an official contract with me now?
いいのか。この衛兵に黙って勝手にそんな取引を持ちかけて。
Are you sure you're doing this behind the royal guard's back?
その近衛兵たちよりはお前たちの方が使えそうだからな。
Those of you
クルー
here
に
are
話を持
leagues
ちかけ
ahead
た
of the
のもそ
royal
れが理
guard
由だ。
in usefulness. That's why I reached out to the Quran in the first
具
place.
体的にどう協力するかは俺が今晩のうちにまとめておく。
I'll put together the specifics of our deal by tonight. As a dolphin, Sheen worked out details. Need 5 people to talk. Oh, yes. That's just one of the many steps. Eves was smiling happy for
な
some
んだ
reason.
か事情を打ち明けてもらえた途端、一気に話が進んだね。
I feel like things are moving more quickly now that he explains what was happening.
あのままだと話し合い自体、平行線をたどっていたような気がしたから、
I'm honest
正直
relieved.
ほっとしてる。
If we had kept it like earlier, we probably wouldn't have reached any sort of conclusion. I see. I don't know all the details, but I'm glad your name is Eves.
口にすればするほど、本当によくわからないよね。
The more I think about it, the less sense it makes.
なんだか面白いです。
This is getting interesting.
でもイブさんは彼のことが怖くなかったんですか？
Weren't you scared of him, Eves?
怖くはないけど、やっぱり緊張はしたかな。ただ俺も彼の研究自体は尊敬してるから、
Not really
衝突せずに
scared.
済んだのは嬉しいよ。
But I was nervous. Still, I respect that what he's done for everyone, so I'm glad things are starting to move.
言っておくが、今回はあくまで特例だ。
Let's just say this time was an exception. He spoke up when he heard the 3 of us talking to each other.
以後俺がお前に対し何事も譲歩することはない。調子に乗るんじゃないぞ。
Moving forward, I won't give your company any special treatment, so don't get your hopes up.
了解です。じゃあ以後は個人的によろしくお願いします。
Understood. If that's the case, I'm looking forward to getting to know you.
事件以外でも困ったことがあれば、いつでも依頼してくださいね。
Please contact me if you need any help apart from this issue. Eves gave Sheen a friendly smile. The clock finally reached the last late afternoon hours. Sheen escorted us back to the entrance. Adolphe and Eves were talking about the order that should be given to the corpse. Mathis was asking Dahat different questions with peculiar interest in the floating screens, which was why as I slowly walked, as a slow walker, I ended up walking alongside Sheen, who made no effort to hide his lethargy. Oh my gosh, this is so awkward. What should I do? Maybe I should start a conversation with him. Or maybe I should apologize for being rude earlier. No, wait, that was my honest opinion. It wasn't rude. I shouldn't be ashamed. I should be brave as possible. I wonder why he was staring at me like that. It was strange considering he didn't show much interest in me earlier, or maybe he wants me to rely another message to mother.
死神の娘、お前に一つ問いたい。
Death girl, let me ask you something. I was wrong. Sheen looked at me as if observing my reaction then.
多くの人間の命の終焉を見届けてきたお前が、
You've seen many lives come to an end with your own two
な
eyes.
ぜ今更その価値を俺に説いた？
Why did you preach to me about life? Well, I understood his question, but I couldn't come up with the answer. Probably because I didn't have any right to talk about the sanctity of life. The reason I instinctively reacted to what he said back then was maybe it's because I'm tired.
ん？
Every time I've brought someone's misfortune as death, I've spent far longer blaming myself and suffering through the guilt. I could have visited their graves or searched for their families to apologize. I could have done many things to show my repentance, but I never have. Which was why maybe I'm just tired of repeating that cycle of regret every time someone dies because of me. I suppose you could say that it's just to soothe my own ego.
なるほどな。以前見かけた時よりはマシな顔になっているはずだ。
I see, I can tell you look a lot better now than when I first saw you. Huh?
俺はそんな未練たらしい価値観を理解するつもりは毛頭ないが。
I have no interest of understanding your viewpoint or regret, but
何の生産性もない幽霊としてただそこにいるだけの存在よりは、確か
I
に
can
幾
at
分か有
least
意義
say
だ。
that your existence is more meaningful than that of some ghost without any productive value. I like it. I like that the option is thank you very much or thank you very much. Oh gosh. Thank you very much. There was no sympathy or admiration in his matter of fact tone, yet meaningful. He had looked at me objectively and saw a change in me compared to before. For some reason, that brought me joy. In the end, we were able to gain new information and a very powerful supporter. I wasn't sure if the results were substantial, but at the very least, we were moving ahead. The hot led us to the gate and smiled brightly.
それにしてもよかったです。
I'm so glad things turned out well.
さっきシアンさんとどういう交渉をしたのか軽く経緯を聞いてみましたけど、
I asked Sheen briefly about how the negotiations with all of you went, and
皆さんよくこの人に呆れも嫌いも泣きもこびもしませんでしたね。多
I'm
分お客さんでは
surprised.
初めてじゃないですか？
You weren't overly in awe or hateful of him. You might be the first of your kind to step foot in here.
俺は至極まっとうに交渉をしていただけだ。
I simply conducted business and negotiated fair and square.
それにしたって高圧的なんですよ。
You were still acting high and mighty.
救世主とかリライバーの生みの親とか言われてますけど、
Sure, he's called a savior and the father of aliver technology, but
そんなに選ぶれる立場じゃないでしょ。
he's really not in a
Okay.
position to act like a big shot after all.
シアンさんが作るリライバーには決定的な欠陥があるじゃないですか。
The reliver's shine creates have a critical fault.
それについては皆さんだってご存知でしょ？
I'm assuming you folks know what I'm talking about, right?
なんでだよ。
What? Why? Zahat looked towards the source of the confused
ど
shouting.
うして僕といきなり別れるなんて言い出すんだい？
Why are you saying you want to break up with me? Right outside the gate was a man in tears clinging desperately to a woman. I know that woman. Isn't that... Oh, I don't need the flashback. Once upon a time, this person was relived, and
無事
he's
で
like,
終わってよかった。
we can be together forever. And she was like, right, sure, I recall.
僕と君はついこの間まであんなにも愛し合っていたじゃないか。
You and me were so in love a few days ago.
しつこいわね。話してよ。
You're such a nuisance, let me go. The woman used her marked arm to pry the man's hand away. She was looking at him in a way that made it hard to believe they were ever
確
lovers.
かにあなたを愛した記録は覚えているけど、
I remember that we were in love,
今の
but
私にはあなたへそんな実感も感情もないの。
right now I feel no sense of love towards you
その
whatsoever.
可能性を承知で、あなたも誓約書の保証人になったんでしょ？
You chose to be the gardener of the pledge, knowing this could happen, right? Do you not work tomorrow? I work tomorrow, but I'm playing a game right now.
それは
But
悪いけど私、
I'm almost done with this part. As soon as I'm done with this part, I'll
新しく好きな男性が
stop
できた
playing.
の。その人と結婚することにするわ。
I'm sorry, but I found someone new, someone I'm going to
ど
marry.
うか、あなたもあなたで幸せになって。
I hope you can find your own
あ
happiness.
なただってリライバーにさえなれば、
It shouldn't be hard since if you become a reliver like me,
私への恋愛感情なんてすべて忘れられるでしょ。
I only sleep like 4 hours. I don't sleep a lot. You'll forget whatever emotions you felt towards me. But the woman walked away as the man fell on his knees. How convenient. See? The hot tilted his head adorably.
欠陥ではなく仕様と呼べ。
It's not a flaw, it's by design.
大体だな。記憶と人格を生前から保持できる真っ当な生命学を無視して作ったクローン体が
Each clone is created outside the rules of biology, retaining a person's memories and personality from before their death.
まともな人間と同じ構造をしているとそう思われる方が心外だ。
It's outrageous to assume that relivers have the same composition as normal humans. That's right.
この国に革命をもたらしたリライバー、お金以外にもまだ大きな代償を払う。
It's a high price to pay. We don't read flashbacks in this house. We could extend our lives as relivers, but we couldn't transfer the emotions we developed into our new clone bodies. The greater the love, the greater the loss. A clone's unique memory organ, the heart, lacked the capacity to store strong emotions. They were only etched in as a record, but no longer accompanied by the emotion itself. Anger, sorrow, resentment, envy, joy, of the many different emotions that was considered impossible to transfer to the next body was love. Humans could escape from the curse of death by choosing to become relivers in exchange for love. And that's why we're ripping hearts out. All right, chapter 5 has started. That's where we're going to take our break then. Yay, we did it. I have food sitting here waiting to be ate.
これは
This is, oh no, I can't skip this? Okay. This is
死神が人間になるための物語。
the story of how death became a human.
絶望と救済へ向かう物語。
A story of despair and salvation. No matter how many corpses have
どれ
been
だけの
piled
死体
high
が
thus
積み上が
far,
ろうとも
it
所
meant
詮は
nothing.
君の決意を促すための
They were merely
Suffering,
sacrifices to
deceit.
encourage your resolve. Night fell quickly after our encounter with Sheen, the founder of the Reliver technology. clones who are able to retain certain amounts of emotions in their hearts, which can act as memory banks, but stronger emotions cause a memory overload to instead of retain such emotions, they simply retain a record of their experiences instead. Oh my gosh, their experiences instead. It is currently impossible to transfer the emotion of love into a liver. It is common knowledge that most emotions nurtured in life will be lost. That's kind of intense. Alrighty, we did it. We made much progress. It may be split into two streams accidentally, but we made it to this point. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. We are now in part 4. It says we're in act 2. I still don't know like if we're on routes yet. I don't think we are. I think we're still just going through the main story, which is interesting. I know I've played before where it's taken like 6 hours to get through the main story to get to routes, so we might not be too far off. The stream's about 5 hours. The previous stream I think I did was about 3, so might be getting close. We could be so far away. The story is getting way more interesting at least. I find the concept in this story very entertaining and intriguing. It's almost as if like the romance part is like an afterthought, and maybe it is. I don't know. We haven't got there yet. But we're gonna see what happens next. I don't know if I'll be playing tomorrow, but I definitely will be playing at some point this week. We'll just see what day it is. Thank you again so much for joining me. If you want to see my older videos, you can check me out on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to see my more recent videos, you can check out my Twitch. I stream irregularly all the time. Thank you. Bye, Sleazy. Bye, guys.